Hello everyone. So back for Oversimplified World War I Part 2. So I saw response in Part 1 is pretty good. Pretty good compared to what most of my videos get. So yes, so I think you'll like Oversimplified reaction videos a lot. So here it is Part 2. Oh wait, sorry, my volume is extremely low, that's why. Just increase it. Yeah.
Stuck in a hard stalemate. They knew this war wasn't going to be about taking territory, but about simply wearing each other down.
Yeah.
The Allies.
Yeah, the war was basically to wear each other down on food, water, basically supply of everything needed.
Had plenty of men to expend from its overseas dominions.
Yeah, so most of the overseas dominions are British here. So these are the Allies' overseas dominions. Canada was a dominion of the UK. This is all of this West Africa dominion of France. Belgium had Congo. And then the British had all of this. The only thing that was blocking them from making Cape to Cairo was Tanzania, which was German. The India was by the British. French Indochina was here. Then Malaysia was from the British had. Then Australia had conquered this, and Australia was under British rule. Then New Guinea, not New Guinea. It was Guyana. Guyana was under British rule, and French Guyana, which is still under French rule.
And the British also started a naval blockade.
Yeah, and at the time, I was watching something yesterday about the Napoleonic Wars. It's basically a reaction from one of my favorite channels, Vlogging Through History. I'll leave a link to his channel in the description. So basically, they talked about Horatio Nelson. He, at the Battle of Trafalgar, where he was killed, he basically made British naval superiority for 100 years. And that really helps the British in World War II to establish a blockade.
So Germany couldn't import stuff, like food. Neither side really wanted a long grueling war though, so they both thought of ways to break the deadlock on the Western Front. Idea number 1, new frontiers. When the war first broke out...
Isn't that... Oh yeah, new frontiers. So so this was German at the time, so Australia took it.
Australia was quick to take German New Guinea. The Allies also quickly jumped on Germany's colonies in Africa.
Yeah, these were all Germany's. Togoland, Cameroon, German Southwest Africa, which isn't modern Namibia, German East Africa, which is Tanzania, Rwanda, and Burundi. Oh, is that Burundi or is that Burundi? I don't know, but yeah.
And particularly in German East Africa, locals were enlisted as soldiers and carriers by both sides, leading to a tragic loss of life for the native Africans.
No, my speaker's 100, just the volume seems a little
Some new combatants entered the war as well. The Allies' new friends were Italy and Japan.
Yeah. Italy and Japan. And both of them joined the Axis in the next World War. So, only because they felt left out by the Treaty of Versailles.
Japan was busy building itself an empire, so it was more than happy to take away German islands and colonies in East Asia. Italy actually had an alliance with Germany and Austria-Hungary before the war.
But then Austria-Hungary wouldn't give them Tyrol and Trieste and basically the entire coastline.
But after some tense relations,
they wouldn't give
them
Tyrol
to give them some of Austria-Hungary's stuff, they switched sides. Italy opened up a front in the mountains here, but like everyone else, they were stuck in...
It took them 11 attempts it took them 11 attempts and they still couldn't break out of their mountain fortress thingy. And then the Austro-Hungarians invaded and with German assistance and basically pushed them back to Venice, which is here.
Stalemate for most of the war. The Central Powers' new friend was a struggling empire in the Middle East.
The Ottomans, the sick man of Europe.
The Ottomen were divided on whether to actually join the war or not, since they had been exhausted by the recent Balkan Wars. Some of the politicians who did want to join...
and the Balkan Wars were basically in the Balkans they talked about earlier, like Serbia, Greece participated, Bulgaria participated, Albania was given independence, Romania participated, and Montenegro also participated in the Balkan Wars.
off on their own and fired some shells at Russia,
Yeah.
and then came back and said, whoops, looks like we're at war now. The Ottoman entry into the war was of particular concern to the British, since the Middle East was full of oil, and Britain wanted all of that oil.
Yeah, but America is also full of oil. So if you had kept America, the US basically didn't revolt, then you'd have a lot more oil.
First, the Ottomans tried to attack Russia in the Caucasus Mountains, but they weren't prepared for the cold, and many of them...
Yeah, the Caucasus are extremely cold. So I'd say there are 4 main mountainous areas in Europe. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Actually, 5. So one of them would be the Caucasus, which are in the southwestern corner of Europe. Then the Balkans, the Alps. No, actually, wait, there's 6. The Alps, Italy. Then there's the Pyrenees and Spain and Portugal. And oh wait, actually I can think of a lot more now. Then there are the Scottish Highlands also. So 7 main mountainous areas in Europe.
Then they crossed miles of desert to take the Suez Canal from the British, but that failed too.
Yeah.
Then the Allies tried to take the Dardanelles at Gallipoli in a long and hard trench warfare.
Yeah, and you wait. I'll show you that.
Then the Allies tried to take the Dardanelles at Gallipoli in a long...
Yeah, you can see these flags. France, the UK, and half of the troops there were Australian and from New Zealand. Half of the troops there were from Australia and New Zealand against basically a Turkish force. So they were just against British, French, New Zealander, and Australian forces.
Long and hard trench warfare campaign.
Yeah.
But that also failed.
That failed.
The Ottomans blamed their initial losses on the ethnic Armenians,
which then led to the Armenian genocide. Oh, and you think why don't the Ottomans have control of Cyprus, which is here? Well, the British have control of that.
Living within Ottoman territory, and the resulting Armenian genocide led to the deaths of 1.5 million people. Then the Germans sent spies into Afghanistan to try to convince the Arab tribes there to rise up in jihad against the British and attack India.
Why would they do that? I mean, China joined the Allies sometime later. So we were basically surrounded from all sides by the Allies, other than Iran, at the time Persia. So Russia in the north, which had control of pretty much all Central Asia, British India in the south, and China in the east. So you only have basically Iran as the only part of the border which is not surrounded by the Allies. Sorry, it's a little cold here today. So that's why I'm sniffling a bit. So, yes.
Yeah, but that plan failed, partly because the spies...
And also this is Qatar.
Spies got bored, brewed their own alcohol, and got drunk, which is a bad thing to do
if you're in Afghanistan.
All these new frontiers hadn't done much to change the war. Aware that the Allies had more men and supplies than them, the Germans knew they had to do something to break this.
Oh, and you think why don't Denmark have all of this? Well, they got to a war with Prussia before Germany unified. So Prussia basically... okay, I'll just explain how the First World War happened. It happened from the Napoleonic Wars, which basically led to German unification through the 7 Weeks War, which was against Austria. Prussia fought against Austria. Then the War for Schleswig, I think it's called, which is here, Austria and Germany fought against Denmark and won, but then 7 Weeks War happened, so Germany took that. And then the Franco-Prussian War, which eventually led to German reunification under Otto von Bismarck and Kaiser Wilhelm I.
The stalemate. Before the war, there was a big conference that set out the rules of modern warfare.
And the Hague is in Netherlands.
Weapons, no killing civilians.
Yeah, but this is exactly what the Germans did in both wars. No chemical weapons. They used it at the end of World War I. They killed civilians. World War II, Hitler used chemical weapons to execute people, and they killed like 15 million civilians. So, yes.
Basically, don't be jerks.
Yeah.
The Germans held a meeting and decided to
let's be jerks.
Zeppelin air raids commenced over British cities. They also...
Oh, and Zeppelins were the main Air Force thing, not planes at the time. It was only Zeppelins mostly.
Started attacking the Allied trenches with chlorine gas, and they used submarines to sink civilian ships. One such civilian ship was the Lusitania.
The Lusitania did not just have some civilians on it. It sunk in 16 minutes, which is surprisingly quick, but it also had anti-submarine weapons. So I only learned about this a few months ago. That all had anti-submarine weapons, I believe. And yes, so it was also carrying weapons. So that meant, and it was an American ship. So that meant the US would get involved if there were too many sinkings of ships like this.
Which had 159 Americans on board
Yeah.
when it was sunk, further swaying US opinion against the Germans.
And
Not to be
about getting
completely unfair
liberated.
to the Germans, the Allies also engaged in chemical warfare soon
Yeah,
after,
true,
and
they
they
did.
had been hiding anti-submarine weapons on their civilian ships,
Yes,
which let
the Lusitania had anti-submarine weapons.
the Germans justify their attacks. Meanwhile, Austria-Hungary still hadn't dealt with Serbia, so the Central Powers enlisted some help.
Oh,
Bulgaria
Bulgaria.
wished it was bigger and was still
And Bulgaria had the largest army in the Balkans. So this is the Balkan countries: Austria-Hungary, Romania, Serbia, Montenegro, Albania, Greece, Bulgaria, and the Ottomans are also counted since, well, the Balkans are until here. They are the largest army, and the Kaiser, not the Kaiser, sorry, the Tsar of Bulgaria, which gets his name from the Russian Tsardom, wanted to be crowned in Constantinople, which is basically in Istanbul. So he fought the first Balkan Wars, led the World Wars, and yeah. Because this thing breaks on the Balkans here. So they had a larger army than Austria-Hungary and the Ottomans, or Serbia, Montenegro, Romania, Albania, or Greece.
bitter about losing the Second Balkan War. The Central Powers promised to make all of Bulgaria's wildest dreams come true if they
That didn't
helped,
happen.
so they signed on, and together they knocked out Serbia.
Yeah.
The Serbian troops retreated through Albania, which was neutral but had some ties to
Yeah,
Austria-Hungary.
it did have
so
some ties to
Austria-Hungary
Austria.
entered Albania in a friendly invasion to chase down the Serbians, many of whom escaped by sea.
To
It's
Italy.
1916, and a lot
Escape
is
to
happening.
Italy.
As if they didn't have enough enemies already, Germany added one more to the list.
Portugal.
Portugal had been getting a bit chummy with
Yeah, and Portugal's a traditional British ally. They had an alliance from 1268. And you search that up because I'm not sure. Alliance. Yeah, it came in 1373. The world's oldest alliance.
the Allies behind the scenes, and Germany didn't like that one bit. Around
Yeah.
the same time, the only sea battle of the war happened. Both sides had a new
The Battle of Jutland. Jutland's basically the peninsula which Denmark is on. And they used dreadnoughts, new invention.
class of battleships called dreadnoughts, but they were so expensive to build that neither
Yeah,
side wanted
too
to risk
expensive.
losing them in a battle. So they kept them in port, except for one time when they had
Yeah.
a big fight and a bunch of them got damaged, so they didn't try that again.
Yeah.
The UK started conscripting men to the army, so they had plenty of reserves, which is just as well because the Western Front was about to get brutal. The longest and one of the bloodiest battles of the war started
Yep.
when
The
the
Battle of Verdun.
Germans launched an attack around the French city of
Yep.
Verdun.
The Battle of Verdun was one of the bloodiest battles, which then initiated the Battle of the Somme, which you might know more than the Battle of Verdun. Oh, and a fun fact about Somme, the river. Edward III crossed it when he was going to fight the Battle of Agincourt was Henry V. It's Crécy. And then Poitiers is his son, Edward the Black Prince.
The French defended it desperately,
Yeah,
leading
they
to
did.
hundreds of thousands of casualties. Under pressure, the French called on its allies to do something to draw the Germans' attention away, so the British started their own long and bloody
Battle
fight,
of the
the
Somme.
Battle of the Somme, with 60,000 British casualties on just the first
In just one day, 61 people were dead, wounded, or missing.
day. It was also here that the British first used one crazy brand new piece of sci-fi
Tanks.
technology.
You
The
invented
Russians had been getting pushed back further and further into their own territory, but in response to the French call for help, they
Yeah.
began a huge offensive, and did really well until they ran out of supplies and got stuck. Seeing how well the Russians had been doing, Romania decided now would be a great time to jump
And then
in
they
and win
got
the war.
pounded.
And then they got pounded. The Greeks were fighting amongst themselves about whether to join the war or not. The king liked the Central Powers, while the Prime Minister wanted to...
Yeah, Greece had a king, and Prince George of Greece and Denmark, who was a cousin of Tsar Nicholas and basically everyone's related. William, older grandson of Queen Victoria, everyone's just related. So he is the king, but I don't think he's the king of Denmark. I'm not sure about that. I think he is the king of Denmark, but I don't know. But yeah.
Join the Allies. After a brief national schism, during which the country split into two...
Actually, wait, I should check that. Christian the Ninth. Oh wow, he reigned for a long time. No, that was 1912 to 47, yeah. King of Iceland is Christian. Oh, 10th, sorry, not 9th. Okay. In Greece, let's check. Constant, okay, yeah. So it's split between two people, okay.
The king finally abdicated and the country reunited.
Yeah.
With Allied help, they began a new offensive. In the Middle East, Russia was pushing into Ottoman territory from the north. The British had also made a landing in Mesopotamia to protect Persia's...
Yeah, and they also had the colony of Kuwait, so they could also send troops through there.
oil fields, and they had also sent a small army up the Tigris River to try to take Baghdad, but the army got sieged in the town of Kut along the way and eventually surrendered. A new offensive was launched from the south with all-out desert warfare. The offensive was aided by one famous
Lawrence of Arabia,
British officer, better known as Lawrence of Arabia, who helped lead the Arab tribes in a revolt that wreaked havoc on the Ottoman supply lines. By the time 1917 rolled around, everyone was exhausted. There were mutinies in the French army, the German...
Yeah, and Russia was about to have a revolution, which pretty much changed world history after that point.
The populace was starving, and the war had drained all of Russia's supplies. There was no clear winner, and it was still anyone's war. The only question now was, who was going to break first?
Russia.
And the answer was Russia.
Yep.
Tired of not eating and mad that a crazy magic homeless guy was calling some
crazy magic
in Petrograd complete...
Crazy magic homeless guy, Rasputin. So he was basically almost magic. So yeah. Yeah, so I just had to stop the recording. Hope it didn't get seen because I paused it. And yeah. So basically, I had my French called, so I just went to go answer that and now I'm back. So Petrograd, basically St. Petersburg.
With riots and strikes. The riots turned into a full-scale...
Yep, the Russian Revolution. Oversimplified has a video on it, which I don't know if I don't know. I'm gonna get to it sometime later. A while later, actually. After I do more Oversimplified videos. World War II maybe is gonna come next. Yes.
Revolution.
Link to the original video. Link to the original video in the description. Yeah, this government threw over the Tsarist government, and then the Bolsheviks threw over this government, which formed the Soviet Union.
Then a few months later, the Bolsheviks overthrew the new government, and they pulled Russia out of the war. This was great.
Yeah, and then Germany got so much of Russia's land.
For Germany, who now only had to focus on the Western Front. But there was still one problem. The pesky United States of
USA,
America was looking increasingly like it was going to join the war. America had been selling supplies to the Allies throughout the war and was getting super rich off the back.
Yep. It got world's first economy during the war.
Meaning it was in fantastic shape and was dangerous to the Germans.
Yeah.
So Germany sent a telegram to Mexico saying, wouldn't it be crazy?
The Zimmerman telegram. Was that telegram which was sent to Mexico asking them to attack the US, but then the British intercepted it and showed it to the Americans.
Crazy cool if you guys attacked America, but the British intercepted the message, showed it to the Americans, and that was the final straw.
They joined.
American troops began shipping out to Europe. This was terrible news for Germany, and they knew their only hope now was to force France and the UK to surrender
And Italy
before the
too.
fresh
So
American
they
troops
could
arrived.
land
It
Italy.
was now or never, so they started one final attack. They converged their troops and hit hard at the Somme and pushed the Allies back.
Yeah.
They hit a second time further north, then again and again. With each hit, the Germans were spending more
Yeah,
and more
they're
resources,
spending more
while
resources.
the Allies were getting better and better at repelling their attacks. By the fifth punch, the Allies held the line and even pushed back. With American troops now arriving in larger numbers, the Allies launched a counterattack, and that was it.
Sorry if you can hear some noise, that's just my dog barking at the top of her lungs. So, yes.
The Central Powers were being pushed back
Yeah.
on all fronts. Bulgaria collapsed first, followed by the Ottoman Empire.
Bulgaria collapsed first because Bulgaria was the force needed for the Ottomans to stay alive. Because if the Allies took Bulgaria, they were attacked from three fronts. Here in the north with Russia, but they were out of the war. But three fronts here from the south connecting to Egypt, here to Kuwait and Persia, and here from Bulgaria. So that just forced the Ottoman Empire to collapse. And then that led to the War of Turkish Independence.
Then Austria-Hungary.
Yeah. On 11/11/1918, Germany surrendered.
Finally, on November 11th, 1918, at 11 o'clock, Germany surrendered. At the peace treaty,
Yeah,
Germany
11
was
o'clock.
forced to reduce its military.
Hey, want to including Austria-Hungary, the Ottomans, and Bulgaria in this question?
Accept war guilt and pay
And there is no Canada, but that was part of the British Empire, so yeah.
the bill for the
Wait,
war.
what?
After
Wait, it says Germany calms down. Okay, they had to reduce the military to only 100,000. Germany should take all the war guilt, and Germany pays like I think it was 800 billion a year, which is a whole ton of money. Not 800 billion, I think it was 80 billion. I don't know. Something like that.
After indescribable suffering and millions dead, the world learnt its lesson.
Actually, let's just check that. Have to pay in reparations. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, 1921, run the scheduled payments record 132 billion gold marks, 333 billion US dollars. Wow, that's a lot a year. But you should have made Bulgaria also pay some of it. I mean,
And never had such an awful war again.
no, they did.
For about 20 years.
Yeah, for about 20 years. Okay, so tomorrow we'll get into World War II Part 1. So yes, that land for today, and I'll link to the original video in the description, and also link to Long Through History's channel in the description. Please subscribe. He makes amazing content. And yes, so thank you for watching, and bye.